Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21st episode of the official Sucrose Stans Podcast. I am here today with three guests. Um, First, Martin. Hello, Martin. Thank you for being here.
Hello, hello. Um, I'm a day one player. I don't have a channel yet. I don't do content, but I've got into theory crafting mostly to be able to clear with my characters. Then transitioned over to trying to have some fun with a bit less powerful characters. So I'm mostly interested in niche teams and how to make unconventional teams.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. Then we have Kinkel.
Yo, my name is Kinkle. I'm a Genshin content creator. I stream Genshin, do a lot of account reviews, abyss clears, viewer abyss, stuff like that.
Yes, yes. We are also very happy to have you here today. And then Raulfigas. Muted. Raulfigas is here. He does clears, and he's a very fun guy. He will talk later, I suppose. Okay, on today's topic, we have sub-DPS, so characters like Emilie, like Chiori, like Yelan. Characters that are mainly focused on damage, but also have some kind of utility, application. Yeah, like what's I guess first of all we can start with the question, do you think right now that sub DPS are worth it, like to get over supports? Because like technically in the best teams, I don't think we have sub DPSs right now. It's always like carry team. So you might like think that that means that sub DPSs are inherently a worse, like belong to a worse kind of archetype. But like, what's your opinion on that? Kinkle, you can go first.
Wait, sorry, say it one more time. The last bit. Sorry.
Basically, in the best teams we have right now, it's always carry. Like it's Marika carry, it's Molani carry or something. The rest are also without any sub DPS, and you might think that sub DPS aren't worth it because of that. Like, and do you think that's really the case, or are there other like pros that teams with sub DPS have?
Well, it kind of depends on who you're using as your carry or like your main slot, because like there are a lot of characters like say for Hutao, Yuemiya, even like some weaker carries that might not be hyper carries like Nuvoletta or Arlecchino that would want a sub DPS to help them out rather than running them in a hyper carry team, because their damage just isn't there to try to push them
Yeah.
to a hypercarry setup, right?
True.
So,
Uh-huh.
like, plus not to mention there are a lot of like cores that just involve sub DPS doing like at least more than half the team's damage, like double hydro, like well, soon to come with this coffee, but stuff like that, right?
Definitely just double hydro.
Yeah. So to act like people shouldn't be pooling sub DPS would be kind of weird to me, especially characters like Yelan or Furina who can be good strong sub DPSs.
Yeah.
Even like building Fisher for Overload or Aggravate, even Yae Miko for Aggravate or Overload, stuff like that. Although Yae Miko's a little less valuable in my opinion, but still,
Yeah.
WPSs still have value in the current state of the game.
Yeah. You could say that. I guess most sub DPSs are pretty versatile, except
Mhm.
Emilie maybe. But even Emilie, like Emilie can function in a lot of teams and be a good, like, kind of a replacement for certain characters if you don't have them. But yeah, Martin, what's your opinion on that?
Actually of the opinion of, well, yes, recently we've transitioned into more just buff one unit to the maximum. That sub DBS inherently has an advantage over hyper carry teams. That it's a bit
True.
harder to counter you because if let's say you're playing something like Mavika and the enemy happens to be immune to Pyro, well, you gonna DPS with your Sita Lolly, or are you gonna DPS with your Bennett or Shilonen or whoever you happen to have on the team, right? Like you'll just completely get shut down. But if you happen to have a team that has like multiple characters doing damage, like Kenkel said, sometimes the damage distribution could even be 50-50, where if one element gets countered, the other element can breeze through it. Think of like certain, let's say floor 11, where they throw at you like Pyro and Hydro Slimes. Well, the best thing to do against Pyro Slimes is Hydro, and the best things to do against Hydro Slimes would be ideally Pyro. So you can kind of play a team that has like, a DBS or like a damage dealer from each side, one being off field and one being on field. And generally speaking, sub-DPSs can end up being a bit more, let's say, flexible or versatile, because they can actually end up slotting in multiple teams, unlike hybrid carries where, well, you're only really playing the hybrid carry when you feel like you want to play the hybrid carry. Meanwhile, sub-DPSs that are versatile, like let's say Xiangling, can see play in a bunch of teams, or Fischl, or any really of the better sub-DPSs we have in the game.
Yeah, that's very true. Okay, well then we can move on to specific character. Oh, true, Raulfigas. You can also get your opinion.
But I was gonna say most of the things people just said now, but there is also another thing. People's perception on sub-DPS gets completely destroyed in KQMs, because KQMs actually downgrades a shit ton on sub-DPS value. Like, they put them on Favonia's 150 CV, and they just basically do nothing. But when you see people with actual investment having those sub-DPSs instead of hyper buffing one of your carries, depending, ends up doing better results overall.
Yeah,
It just depends on investment
I'm
and the carry itself.
a very strong defender. Like even back in the day, like literally even when Yelan released, I said that Aqua was a decent weapon on Yelan, and that it's not like a side grade like Sejef said, because I saw the situations in which her energy recharge requirements would be pretty low, and like in those situations it would just, like, Aqua was such a strong weapon, and it like we can talk about Yelan later, but it would like help Yelan's main strengths, especially with like C1 or something. And you can feel the Aqua, like you can feel the difference from like Hu Tao double Hydro with Aqua on Yelan and Favonius on Yelan. I guess Xingqiu, you're the Hu Tao double Hydro expert.
Intentional difference.
You see,
It's very noticeable.
I would say I haven't compared Aqua to Fav much, but I have used her with Aqua, and there is a different like an increase in damage, I would imagine, because it feels very strong. I have compared it to Elegy, and depending on your Huta investment, it's even better than Elegy for Yelan. But yeah, I mean there is a difference. I don't know how you would say it's a Fav side grade when it if you can run lower yard Yelan.
The only team where Elegy Yelan was somewhat playable was Hu Tao, and only one part of the passive was useful, which was the EM, and was only for one unit. It would end up just not being worth it using her. You will be better on using a level 1 Moon's Noon, which is a burst buffing weapon, a level 1 weapon, R5, than using Elegy. Simply because the buff just wasn't enough.
I don't know about that take. I've from what I've used Elegy, it's actually been quite strong. Attack mat is still attack is still a stat Hu Tao can use, by the way. It's not as strong as HP, but it's close to HP in value, so it's not like it's flat HP. Flat attack percent is a stronger stat than flat HP actually on Hu Tao. So
how much is the EM again? I forgot.
100 EM. It's 100 EM, 20% attack.
Okay. Well, I mean, 100 EM is pretty good for Hu Tao. But like Hu Tao is not the majority of the team's damage. Although I don't know, it's
It depends on your Rutao investment.
That's
It
what I'm
can
saying.
be and
Hotel
it can't
investment.
be.
Yeah,
But
that's what
if
I'm
you're
saying. Like,
Yelan, from experience, if your Yelan has high investment, you would rather just give her more damage than buffing Rutao. But if your Rutao is also high investment, it ends up being in a limbo. You don't know what to do, so you just optimize and see what gives you the best results. It's likely damage on Yelan if in this scenario.
like my hotel, for example, was really high invested. Like triple
Mhm.
crown, really strong artifacts, that type of thing. So from what I calc, it was almost always better to run LG on hotel rather than to run Aqua. Well, that was before I even got LG refinements, which I did end up getting like hurt at R3 by accident, which makes
Oh
it even
no.
stronger. What's
Oh,
at
I see.
Lovely now, it's a bit different. I do believe Aqua's a bit stronger now for total team damage because of how much Sully buffs Yelan now with Sully
Oh
plus
yeah,
Furina.
true.
You'll
Mm,
always go down to artifact investment, like you guys already talked about it, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
If you
exactly.
have more invested Yelan versus if you have more invested Yutao, how much is your
Mhm.
ER, how much flexibility you can go with.
It's
There's
not
way
even
too many
on
factors
just
to say
Rutao as
it's
well.
Yeah, I think also something that matters a lot, which I don't really see people talking about. I
Mhm.
think very optimized Yelan gameplay involves using her barb shot, and no one uses her barb shot. I have a
I use it.
crowned, I have a crowned basic because I love the barb shot. And if you get, especially if you get 2 skills per rotation, and you are like against 2 or more targets, which I know Hu Tao isn't the greatest in, but like then you should definitely use the barb shot. It's like 2 barb shots equals 1 skill. That's how you can, like, damage wise. That's how you can like think of it.
And I recall the barb shot being like extremely fast charging. So if you do the
Yeah,
cancel
yeah.
right, you kind of just win.
If you have C1, you do like burst into barb, into skill, into barb, skill into another barb maybe. Like at the start.
Isn't the reset?
It's a lot of field time, but yeah.
Yeah. Isn't the reset RNG?
Yeah,
It is
the reset
RNG.
is RNG, but if you are against 3
Yeah,
targets, it's like 90% or
it becomes
something.
it goes up I
Oh,
believe like
okay,
80% or
yeah.
70%. Goes from like it's 36 base, I believe, if I remember correctly, and then it goes up in increments. The more targets you hit with your skill.
What? Sorry.
I was saying that the more targets you hit with the skill, the higher the chance of you getting a barb shot back
Yes, it's
becomes.
yeah. The chance adds up basically.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Okay. Well then, I guess we can go deeper into Yelan. Where's
Next Sub-dps.
the
Next
music?
Sub-dps.
How did the music just turn off? Okay, anyway. So there's this big discussion, there's always been the discussion between Yelan, Xingqiu, and Furina. We can go right into it.
the
I
2
think
years
kind
long discussion.
people just kind of accepted Furina as like the best out of the three, but Yelan versus Xingqiu is still. How is it still a thing?
Yeah, it's
I think there are certain scenarios where that can be debated.
For me, I feel like they were more of like pretty equal to each other before the release of Furina, but Furina benefits Yelan so much that I feel like it's not really close anymore.
I agree.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
I think
I don't-
Xingqiu. Yeah,
I was gonna say I don't find myself using Xingqiu much anymore these days.
yeah. I'm.
I still remember before Sumeru when the Hydro Resonance was healing bonus, now it's HP.
I called
That
that, by the way.
also helped her down the line when Furina released.
Yeah, when Yelan came out and Double Hydra became like the new standard for a lot of different teams, I was like, I guarantee you they're going to change it, the Hydra resonance from healing bonus to HP percent, and they did, and I was like, bro, I called it out.
I'm still waiting for more resonance changes, to be honest. I don't know why they forgot about them. Like
Trust
it's
me, I'm still coping that they're gonna do something to the G resonance. Like it's good, it's great, but it needs to be a bit more than what it is.
I think the
And Geo Resonance is the last resonance that needs to be touched.
Again, I know it's a really strong resonance and it's good and all, but it doesn't really favor the G units as much
Yeah, I
as
was
the
I
rest
was
of
gonna
the
say
other roster.
It's
it
pretty
favors
solid.
Zhongli a lot. It favors Zhongli a lot because of the shield aspect of it.
Yeah.
And at the current moment, Zhongli is not used as much compared to other Geo units. So like, it would be a nice. I doubt they'll ever change it again after changing it already.
Like the GU
Um,
resonance does more for non-GU characters by just slotting in like 2 GU units than it does for the actual GU carries we have in the game.
that too as well.
I think the Dendro resonance is the one that like substat wise, is it like it's like 25% unconditional attack for Pyro and then 25% unconditional HP for Hydro, and then it's 100 EM, but it's like it is conditional. The first 50 EM is conditional, and then the rest is also conditional. I forgot, but like
Oh, okay. About Dendro resonance, let me just slate up as a fun fact because I want to shit on this unit. Baizhu's buff loses to Dendro resonance.
I did not know that.
Damn. I didn't know yet another day where we beat the poor the poor sick man again.
That's
I'm
very
sorry, Ayato.
tragic. And it's also team wide. Like then Baiju's is
Yeah.
only for the on-fielder.
Yeah, 100 is the resonance is team wide. Baizhu's only for like single target.
Hey
Oh,
guys,
Like
don't
for
worry.
on the
For the end
on-fielder.
of time, he'll have a really high usage rate because of Nuvolet. It's all good.
It's more
Surely.
so. Yeah, he's hard carried by Nuvolet in usage rate. It's insane.
I don't know
And the
why
moment
people are
he,
still playing that.
I'm just gonna
Vegeta,
say
better.
another fun fact. The moment he dropped it, Kazu and Baizu drop it tremendously. They're hard carried by him.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, well then I think we should move on. Actually, we didn't go that much into depth. I also wanted to give my opinion. Well, Xingqiu. Oh yeah, Xingqiu. I still think that he's kind of underrated, but no match for Yelan. After Furina. Because like Furina made double Hydro so offensive, and Yelan's damage was just always worth it over Xingqiu's defensive utility. Although, like, if you really, really needed the defensive utility, you could always play Xingqiu. But I do think that in Escoffier teams, actually no, I forgot that the signature weapon is only 3 seconds or something team wide, and then it's like the rest would be since it only heals one target. Do you all have the signature in mind of Escoffier?
So the cool thing about Escoffier's signature is there are actually some teams where you're allowed to switch out to other teams, like for example the Shanhei teams, where you can maintain the buff on both your on-fielder and Shanhei because you want to do another E with Shanhei and your carry like Aika, for example, would allow you to, which automatically makes it so before the buff disappears, you end up getting a healing tick on the buff before it disappears on Shanhei, which then prolongs the buff again. Right? So like there are cool optimizations like that if your carry allows you to switch out. So, you can get your Shanhei second E per
It's
rotation.
definitely optimal for Ayaka, but does her healing, like, is Escoffier's healing, how long is the duration again?
If I recall, her burst is just like the tick, and then the passive has a 9-second duration healing with 1-second intervals.
Yeah,
So
but
if you can time it right, it's perfect.
you want to do Shanghai skill every 10 seconds. I don't think that fits then. Like in
I mean,
Ayaka
the
teams.
quills are gonna dissipate in like half a second. Ayaka takes a lot.
Yeah, well, maybe
there's
it's going to work out anyway. And yeah, I was just going to say that initially I thought that the team-wide attack buff was like an actual team-wide attack buff, but it's not actually. So Xingqiu, yeah. One day we will get some team-wide attack buffs, and then Xingqiu might see more usage. But as it currently is, we only have single target attack buffers. We don't have a Robin. Robin would
Hey,
Robin would kind of
hey,
break
you're
the game.
stepping on Amber C6 over here, right? 20%
know.
attack buff to the whole team. Let's not.
Yeah, you know what? That's not
Oh,
nothing.
yeah.
Jordan said like 20% attack. Okay, take what we can get.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
But no, jokes aside, we do definitely lack a bit
The
in the
biggest
attack department.
winner.
But what we lack in the attack department from units themselves, we kind of have from artifacts. Like you have noblesse, you have tenacity, which can like cover to some extent like the attack
It-
saturation.
It doesn't cover fully, but it's what we have right now. We gotta deal with it. And you look 20% attack on one set, 20% attack on another. Now we get the modern supporting set, 40 damage percent for free.
And
Big
another
difference.
thing about attack in general is like again, this is more of like a higher investment thing, but for people who have like Furina, if you put Furina in a team with let's say a scroll user and Furina happens to have a C1 for example or a C2, well, you're getting so much damage percent that
Mhm.
you can actually just go attack goblet. And in
In
a
some
lot of scenarios it
situations.
can end up being equal or even better, slightly better depending on your substats and stuff. So while having a team-wide attack buff would be very good, it might not be as good for people who have invested, Furina.
Yeah, that's true.
It needs more sub DPSs with skills of attack. Basically, more Emilies, more the Scoffiers
Yeah.
type of shit. Because at the moment, it's like Xingqiu, Official, Yae, Le Xiangling, and I believe that's it. With Chiori's mixed.
Yeah, she's
No.
a bit of
Yeah,
attack scaling.
she's mostly defense still.
I think if anyone wants to go over to, actually we should probably. I still have some things to say about Furina, my usual Furina takes. Like compared to Yelan, even though they are played together, I still notice Yelan sub DPS a lot more than I notice Furina sub DPS. Like I always did. And
Yeah,
just because you can
it's
front
a
load Yelan's damage so much with skills and barbs and stuff. And
it's a feeling that mostly comes from Yelan activates on your demand. You do the command and it does automatically. The other is automatic by itself. You don't control it. So you don't feel it as much,
I
even if
don't
it does
think
better.
I don't think it's just a
That's
like
personal.
thinking thing. I think it's actually the case that Furina doesn't really have a lot of sub DPS impact in these teams where you
She
also
takes
would
care
play
well
Yelan.
in general.
I mean, I kind of feel like I disagree with that one. If anything, her damage is at least the same as on. I've never couched Furina because I can't sit down and actually count how many times she hits, but I would highly imagine that she has at least the same amount of damage as Yelan.
Well, I do think that it highly depends. I don't think like Aqua like if you also give her say I never tried like signature Furina, barely anyone has it, but just playing Aqua always seemed like a bigger upgrade to me than playing Tranquility Quill weapon. I forgot its name. But yeah.
Honestly, I would just I would honestly just use key on her rather than that weapon.
Oh yeah,
That's the
Key.
other
Oh
issue
my
that like her
goodness,
signature suffers
Key
from.
gives her quite a bit of damage. If you can, especially if you can vape any Furina's hits, Key gives you a shit ton of damage. I don't like her sig weapon at all. I feel like it's a bit of a scam.
Yeah,
That's
like
just
her
my opinion.
signature weapon not having energy is a mistake that I feel like they learned from this point onward.
Yeah,
Hopefully
yeah,
they
man,
won't make the same
it's
mistake.
kind of bad.
But at the same time, even in situations where you would like to get her signature, because I've seen a lot of guide makers say, "Oh, you can get her signature C4." Like again, like early on like Furina's release. But one thing that the same content creator learned with her rerun is, well, key exists. In a lot
Yeah,
of these teams, where you
Yeah.
actually care about her damage. She actually gets to do a reaction, and when she does reactions, well, multiplicative reactions are a thing. So the EM ends up actually not only benefiting her but benefiting other characters.
Yeah.
So like, this is like it puts her in a situation where it's like, okay, you have C4 and you care about Furina's damage, and for whatever reason,
Mhm.
you're not doing any reactions where EM matters. So like you're playing double hydro, I guess.
Novelette, maybe.
You know?
Like that's
Yeah, right. Like
like
it
it.
becomes such like niche scenarios that like if you have key, just use key.
Yes. That's what I
If like
always
what you
say.
want to see is like bigger Furina damage, especially.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Okay, so where I do also think that is what was I about to say? Well, yeah. Okay, key is very valuable. I do agree. Also for her personal damage, it's nice, but I still feel like what do you think about Furina's AoE?
Oh well. I mean, if the enemies are grouped, maybe.
To me, it's as simple as did the crab hit? We applied Hydro
Yeah.
in UE. Did the crab not hit? Well, we're single target.
Yeah. When it comes to like targeted hydro application, Furina, I feel is just kind of dog. And at that point, I would rather just use Yelan for like characters like Yumiya, for example. But I don't know. If enemies are spread out, which tends to be the case in a lot of abysses, and we're leaning towards teams that have less groupers at the current moment, with restorators like Escoffier and Shinna existing, Escoffier and Jelonin existing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So like, at that point, Freena's AOE is just kind of it's not really there, in my opinion.
That's true.
But the thing also about Furina, we're in a like situation where like
Hey,
you
big.
opened the episode with, which is hyper carries. And in the
Mhm.
teams where, like, let's say Mavwika is there, right? And there's like 3-4 enemies and they're like kind of far apart. You just
Mhm.
bursting on Furina already guaranteed they all have Hydro. And I guarantee you by the time you switch to Mavwika and Rescue, they're dead. Like, you just need one reaction most of the time to kill them.
Oh yeah.
So, like, her burst can deal with like applying Hydro in AoE. And the other thing you can do is like thanks to the bets deciding to target the same thing you're targeting. If let's say an enemy is far away or someone doesn't have the correct order that you wanted, you can just tag it. And as you're going through your other characters for the next rotation, you'll guarantee that thing to have Hydro. So like, it's mostly for carries that have better AoE than Furina, and happen to rely on reactions to get like multiplicative reactions, where like Furina struggles.
Yeah,
I can see
Yeah.
that.
I agree. Yeah. Um. Well. Has anyone
Did I miss
ever?
something?
No, 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 you didn't. Has anyone ever tried like C2 Furina with Arlecchino? I know Arlecchino with C0 Furina is cringe, but
Mm,
like with C2
I
Furina?
haven't.
I have asked someone that
I've
had
tried it with
experience with
C1.
it,
I haven't tried
and
it with C2.
they kind of just don't like it. Because you will have your Arle at like a 50% HP nearly all the time. And
Yeah.
it's gonna be a pain in the you're literally at the distance of one hit.
Yeah,
But if you have
okay.
C2 Furina, you likely have enough damage to a point where it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But at some point, your Furina just doesn't generate fanfare at all, or
Yeah.
nearly
I would.
anything.
Yeah. I haven't tried it myself because I kind of after playing Arcane with Furina for a while, I kind of just felt it was kind of dog and stopped doing it. I kind of just stopped doing Arcane of Abe altogether because I felt like just compared to Overload, it's just kind of not that great in my opinion. But
That's true.
yeah, when playing it with C1, it was extremely hard to generate fanfare, and I imagine because Arlecchino just doesn't heal whatsoever, you're generating such little. I don't know if you could even max fanfare with even with
The
C2.
only way to generate fanfare in an Arlecchino team is if you manage to make one of your supports have some like presence time inside Bennett's
Yeah,
burst. You happen like
yeah.
1 or 2 heal techs. That's
You'd
the
have to
only
actually
way.
sit and wait.
You can also do something that's a little bit annoying, which is you switch Furina to healing mode as you're bursting, and during the burst animation, she'll get like a few ticks, and
No,
then you
that could
switch
work too.
once
Yeah.
the animation is done. And a lot of people think it takes a lot of time, but it actually doesn't, because I've seen it
Well,
be done
it,
in speedruns. Like, so
if
it's not
it's your
that bad,
only way
but
to
it can
do
be
it,
annoying.
if it's your only way to do it, might as well. You get nothing from anything else, so
Yeah,
Yeah, and
right.
I think that if you're C2, just Freena's healing alone would allow you to max unfair for that's like a Freena plus a little bit of benefit you might get, like the 1 or 2 ticks you might get, would be enough to max unfair at C2. Assuming your Freena has a decent bit of HP, which she should at C2, but
Yeah.
I also want
And
to say
also,
her if you're I was just gonna say like damage wise, if you're using someone like Kazuha, you actually might be able to get Freena to vape quite a bit in that kind of team, which she at C2 she will do quite a bit of damage vaping. So there's that too to consider,
Mhm.
but
Oh yeah, yeah,
And,
true.
honestly, I'd argue, especially with the leaked game mode, there were some sus leaks saying that it will come in 5.7, requiring 3 teams. I'd argue that one of Arlecchino's strength is not wanting Furina. Like,
yeah,
there are other units that don't mind having her or would like to have her.
she will prefer Citlali, if we're
Yeah,
being
right?
honest.
So, like,
either that or
Arlecchino
overload.
not synergizing with Furina is actually a plus, not a minus, to a
Yeah,
lot of
Now,
people and a lot of
and
comps.
even nowadays, where you have like Citlali was now her best support, it's just not even an issue anymore.
Okay, well then, just I guess we don't have any more stuff to say about the Hydros. Maybe we should move on to
Chiori,
Xiangling.
There is one thing I want to say actually about Xingqiu, because we never really
Hmm?
got more into
The-
Xingqiu. We kind of like talked mostly about Yelan, which is there are certain comps where you could argue Xingqiu over Yelan, and it's mostly Dendro teams.
yeah,
Because
Oh yeah,
at that
that's
Yeah.
point you
true.
just care about
that's very
hybrid
true.
generation. One of the characters that also really likes Xingqiu over Yelan would be a character like Alhaitham. Like,
Mhm.
he doesn't really lose that much from being interrupted, but he doesn't want to be interrupted. So the interruption resistance and damage reduction that he gets, since Cookie isn't healing a massive amount, can actually end up making Alhaitham feel a bit more comfortable over Yelan.
Yeah.
And
Also, his rotations can be longer
yeah,
as well,
right.
which helps.
Like, the fact that Alhaitham, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on the people playing him, doing more damage in split rotation, that means he doesn't really mind the higher cooldowns for Xingqiu as much, and he doesn't value the damage percent from Yelan, especially if you're on the lower investment of things. So if you don't have a really invested Alhaitham and you're just running him at C0 with like an Iron Stink, you end up getting more damage from the Hyper Bloom than you do from the aggravates. So giving him a damage percent buff from Yelan doesn't do as much as just generating more cores.
To be fair, then I wouldn't play Alhaitham. I would just play something else, like instead of
Yeah, I
Alhaitham.
mean, Dendro definitely isn't the top pick currently, but maybe that will change with the new game mode, right?
Oh no, I
instead
meant
of
like
being Dendro.
in that team. Like to me, Alhaitham's pro is like that he can abuse that quicken aura to get his spreads to do his personal damage. And if he doesn't get to do that, then I would rather just play Fischl in that slot or
I mean,
something.
even with the Xingqiu, he does still get to do, like, you still get some quicken uptime. It's just lower quicken uptime than if you use someone like Yelan or Furina.
I mean, there's a way to make him not have that much of a problem anymore. First, toggle constellations, and then you disable the C6. No more extra hydro.
Yeah, there you go.
True.
But then you also
True.
you get a shit ton of ER issues on Xingqiu.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, true. 230, yeah.
We've been
Back to
spoiled by
Sakivo,
C6 Xingqiu. We
extend
forget
that
that
rotation time by another second, please.
we
21
forget that
second
Xingqiu had
rotation.
It's a
Xingqiu had
price
like
to
some of the
pay
worst
for
ER
quick
issues.
enough time.
But yeah, no. The
I
constellation toggles would change so much that
Yeah,
I might actually
that
finally C6 my Bennett.
yeah,
would
I
be
think
amazing to have constellation knuckles.
I mean I have talked about it before, but like Xingqiu in Nilo teams very strong, very nice.
Oh yeah, I
Oh
yeah.
yeah,
Also, since we're
freaking
talking about Dendro and Nilo teams in general, Ayato technically exists. I know this is not about Sub-dps, but you can
Ayato exists.
do
I mean, I took to
Sub-dps
be a
Ayato.
DPS. I've done it.
Yeah,
You can do it. It kind of
yeah.
sucks, but you can do it.
Like you want the AoE Hydro app that is persistent even when you switch out. Ayato's there. He
There was a
exists.
time when that was our only like decent source.
Yeah,
Like
but I
it's
think
a
that's
That's
side
relevant,
cool.
track.
right? Since
That was
like
a
the
thing
Chronicle
until
banner is
new
coming
got
up.
released. Now, if you wanted to on-field a Hydra unit, just on-field new. Unlucky for Ayato. They both have brain dead AoE, but one has personal damage, even if it's lowered by a noticeable amount.
So it's mostly just for people who are going for Ayato, because there are some people who might go for Ayato for whatever reason, being aesthetic or story or collection sake. He can work in Nilo teams, and he's definitely not like hindering the team down if you know what you're doing. And him being able to do 2 E's per rotation in Nilo teams shouldn't be too difficult. Should lower his ER by quite a bit, so he can go for a bit more personal damage on him.
What's
And
his
again, the big AoE fits him perfectly because his slashes, for reference, are about as big as Raiden's initial slash from her Q.
Yeah.
So they're pretty massive, and that's usually where Nilo shines, right? Like big AoE groups.
what is
Yep.
Ayato's skill cooldown again? I forgot.
12 seconds.
12 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
And he
Why
has,
did
I
they?
think, around 6 seconds of
Yeah, 6
uptime.
seconds of up. Yeah, 6 seconds of uptime.
Why did
So 6
they
seconds
give him a
downtime.
20-second cooldown burst with the 12-second cooldown? It's so awkward.
It is
It
very awkward.
really is. But like one of the things actually that I like to mention about Ayato is apparently during the beta or early tests or something like that, he was designed in a way where he would synergize with Yumiya. And you can actually see that in Yumiya's burst and like Ayato's burst and like their timing and stuff, is that they were meant to like be blade together, and you kind of do like half uptime with Ayato and half uptime with Yumiya. And his burst was supposed to complement her to vape, and her burst was supposed to complement him to vape. But
Surely.
Oh no.
they decided at the end not to do that, and they left the units without actually giving them decent multipliers.
Oh
Honestly,
no.
So, you know,
if the kits were made today with the knowledge the devs have nowadays, with the tools as well, they probably have more shit now. They could probably make that a thing
yeah,
very easily.
it would
yeah.
be really cool, right? Like, just be able to cycle between 2 units, dual DPS. Like, the closest thing we have to that right now is like Navia. Navia kind of doesn't mind like sharing
Ooh,
uptime with like even a unit like Arlecchino in like a double
Yeah.
GU Bennett team. And
Yeah.
it's not their best team by any shot, but it is a dual DPS if that's what you want to do, right? You do a bit of Arlecchino, you do a bit of Navia. They don't mind sharing the Bennett uptime to do their damage, so it can work.
Navia is the closest to a dual carry like requirement unit.
Yeah, I think that's the like if anyone ever wants to play like a funny Navia team, just put Navia in literally I even played Navia Linny a lot. Like back
Yes,
in the day.
Navia
It was
Noni is
pretty
actually
funny.
really fun. It is very fun to do. Navia doing like 2 new character, like Navia with another like pseudo new character like Mavika I've done is actually pretty fun. And also Navia Noel, which I just did it to force Goro in a
I
in a
have
Furina
seen
team, and it worked decently well.
Like I remember at some point the Jeff mentioned on like Navia's pre-release or something like that, or boss release, that the best possible teammate for Navia would be another Navia.
I mean,
Like if
I
you were
agree.
allowed to
I agree.
have 2 Navias on the same team and you just alternate between their E-cast skills and they both are giving each other crystallize,
Yeah, that's
it would
true.
be
that
kind
would
of
be pretty nice actually. Yeah,
ridiculous.
that would be
Yeah, I wonder if we
Yeah, and
ever get another.
the closest to that Navi is Chiori.
You already see 6 through, and then you find out that you're doing pyro damage because you see 6 through Bennett. No!
Yeah.
Bennett
don't
isn't
run
a
Bennett.
good Bennett isn't a good support for C6 Chiori.
Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, at C5, I don't know. Is he still not best
He's
in slot?
still not. Like the defense
No.
scalings, like the main
Goro is
thing
better.
making the basics good is the defense scaling, and Bennett is now
Yeah.
buffing that.
I see.
As much
Yeah,
as I try
when
to
it comes
not
to
run
that-
Goro in certain teams because I don't like Goro. Goro is, if for any defense scaling character, Goro is just kind of the goat, unfortunately.
Yeah, the closest to that would be, well, the C6 Chiori in question, Navia, Goro, and an applier of their element that applies good, which,
There's
like
actually,
Furina or Yelan.
there's actually another funny thing about C6 Chiori. It's C6 Yelan and C6 Chiori just dual carry, like switching
yeah.
between
Yeah.
them. You can also
Yeah.
do that.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing a Shilonen burst doing like 1,000,000 altogether. Like 330k ticks. Just like a full million in the ult. It was hilarious.
Almost as good as C0 Mavuika, true.
Hey, Mabuika ain't buffing the team
Eh.
as much as a C6 Shilonen though, so it's fine. You get a free Ungen at
C6
C4 as well.
Okay,
So
speaking
C6 Mavuika in the sub-DPS role, C6 Mavuika supports you by killing the team and the enemies. Kills everyone.
speaking of Chiori, we can talk about Chiori a bit. Like what
Yeah.
We
are
just skipped Xingling. We were gonna
Okay,
talk
yeah,
about
true. I
Xiangling.
was going to. I mean, there's not much to say. Like Xiangling mainly a
Yeah.
sub DPS in mono pyro or international or mel teams, I guess.
Her most used sub-DPS zones is generally Overload nowadays. Her must play
Yeah.
a team being Vereza.
Yeah, but she doesn't do damage. Like she does a bit of damage, but it's not like her focus. She's
If
just
you
there for
snapshot,
application, right?
if you snapshot Janssen, she can actually do very, very solid. And since
Mm.
Varesa moves a lot, you can actually cheat out more Xiangling hits to where it, in some cases, can be better than Mavuika.
And
Hmm.
not just that, on top of that, Veressa doesn't really mind switching into Xiangling mid like uptime to
Yeah,
do
the
like
only character
awkward
that really
like
had that
half
issue
rotations.
is
No, I'm
the
saying
only.
like you don't have to extend your rotation because of Xiangling because you can start in the middle and also you get to place Goba basically whenever he's off cooldown because again Veressa doesn't mind switching out.
I mean, it depends on the matchup as well.
Yeah, for sure.
On Automaton, you kind of just don't use her burst until Automaton is down, so you just use Guba.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, okay, other than overload teams, there's also, I think, male teams, honestly, where she's doing, like, it's a bit awkward because, like, male teams are supposed to be the cryo characters' most amping teams, but then also they have such a big, like, Xiangling still has such a big influence. Mavuika actually isn't enough for Risley, right? Like, enough pyro.
Yeah.
For Rightly, it can be enough, but you have
Depends on the
you
combo.
just have to time it.
Yeah.
I
But
see,
it
I
can be
see.
enough.
Which I think again is one of like the best things about Risley compared to other cryo characters that you can kind of decide to make him a driver, or you can make him more of the enabler, or you can make him the one to melt, and you can kind of control like also his cryo applications by doing different combos and different levels of charge attack. So like he has at least some depth when it comes to that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I still really like the Risley, Shilon, and Bennett Xiangling team. It's a bit like it's not the greatest, but it feels very comfortable to play. And Xiangling is like Xiangling is just a solid source of damage to me.
I
She
agree.
has high burst requirements, like energy requirements still in that team. But she can still hit quite high, and obviously her biggest strength is her AoE. Which Risley's AoE is not the best, and Jungling's AoE is definitely a compensation for Risley's AoE, in my opinion. Okay, well
Yeah.
then, no, I don't think there's much to say about Jungling. And then Chiori. We should focus on C0 Chiori first, because I feel like that's the problem zone.
That is one thing that I've always noticed that content creators do some, where they rate Shiori as if you just have C1. People just pretend everyone has C1 Shiori, and like, yes, if you have Shiori and you really like her and you want to play her in like certain Navia teams or whatever, sure, C1 is very good. But
Mhm.
That's
I
another limited.
feel like
unit. That's a lot of wishes.
I feel like it's the opposite for me. I always see CCs like shitting on Chiori and just pretending that her C1 doesn't exist. Fix her
Yeah, right.
issues.
Which is interesting because people, like you said, either only talk about C1 or they only talk about C0. Very rarely you see people like address both and talk about like how good of a character she can be. And maybe that's because they don't want to make the video too long. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not a content creator myself, but
Mhm.
she obviously is really strong at C1. She can be very versatile. She can fit on a lot of teams. She does really good amount of damage to sub-dps even by today's standards. And you have Xiangling to complement that in order to get the double Geo core, so that also makes her better and better. But at C0, in a lot of teams, you are either forced to run Kachina or Zhongli to get her damage up, but then you're sacrificing, another unit like Xiangling, for example. And at times like that, it's kind of hard to recommend people to go for her, unless, again, you're either going for the C1 or you already have a team in mind that has construct. But like, what teams that have construct that are not jungly teams? I guess Ito, because Noel doesn't even have a construct. Her shield doesn't count as construct. So at C0,
Yeah.
she can be kind of very restrictive, and her damage isn't really that much better than Albedo. It's still better, don't get me wrong, but it's not by a significant amount. And
Okay,
that's not to say
it is significantly better than Albedo.
I would say it's significantly. I was gonna say I've been using Chiori at C0 for like a while, mostly with like Nuvalet wheelchair with Zelona, and I don't know. I've never really noticed a damage issue. Like she's popping out a lot of damage. I just find it really fun. Maybe I just really like Chiori, so I just like to run her whenever I can. I've also done it with Articuno as well. I don't know. I don't notice many damages, but maybe that's C2 Jelonin carrying.
Or
Probably.
C2 Girona, wow.
C2 Xiangling
Yeah.
makes a huge difference for any GU
Yeah.
unit.
Yeah.
It's
So-
50 damage percent for Chiori and 45 HP for your Nuv. It's very massive.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
But again, that's what I'm saying. Like, before you go for Shiori, in case you heard that Shiori is like a really good sub DPS, do note without a C1, there's an asterisk, and it's a pretty big
Yeah.
asterisk
Yeah.
to take into account. Because if you're looking for a more versatile damage dealer, like unironically, you might be better off going for Yae even or Emilie. Like, sure, they're not as
I would
good
not
as
say Yae,
damage
but
dealers, but
Yeah. I don't know if I would say yeah, but yeah.
again, Shiori with a single doll isn't gonna be wiping
Mhm.
the competition. Basically, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I think
Some quick fun fact about Chiori. In YS Helper, which is an app used mostly for usage rates, not around CN but more around UNA regions. And I've checked the highest constellation average units. Chiori is the third one. Then I checked the values, and there's more people with C6 Chiori than C1 Chiori. She's the highest
That's
C6
crazy.
ownership in the game.
that's
In like
base.
a 9 million or sample size. There's more people with C6 and C1, which is funny to me.
Yeah,
She has really stupid constellation scaling,
yeah,
if you see.
the interesting thing about Shiori's C2 and C4 is that both are like really good as like
Yeah.
top DPS constellation. It's really C2, C3, and C4 are all great for boosting her damage, and I don't think there's another sub DPS with constellations that are this great, to be honest.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
true.
agree.
Emilie's C4 is also crazy. Emily's C4 makes her burst.
Her C4 is absolutely stupid when it comes to AoE. I have seen like Emilie hyper carry, some guy doing that, C4 or C6 or something, and the burst just pretty much wipe it like 2-3 waves, or like the entire chamber sometimes.
Yeah,
If you group them tightly.
Emily's
Yeah,
C4
no, Emilie is a
scary.
monster with constellations. Also, let's not
Yeah.
forget the rest shred on her C2 if you're using her
Yeah.
with Kaniche, which is her beaming
That's very
routine.
true. Yep.
Like, you're not only buffing your Emilie, you're buffing your Kaniche as well, which will very much appreciate it.
Oh yeah.
And also, like, her C1 can like make her uptime for the passive and for the max level turret really good. So in general, she
Oh.
has like fantastic constellations. But that's actually one thing I wanted to ask, which is, what about future impact? Is it better for a unit to focus more on their own personal damage, or is it better for them to focus potentially on buffing? Because that makes them maybe more relevant when more stronger DPSs come out.
I
Mm,
might say it
it's a
could
mix
depend on their
of
archetype, like
both.
with their who they're meant to be used with. But I don't know. It's a hard question to answer in general, though.
I'd say it's a mix of both. If you do
Yeah.
really good damage and you're good at that singular damage job that you do, you will have a good future. No matter if you're like hella restrictive, because who knows? Maybe you will get a new DPS for that restriction itself. You never know. The future is uncertain. No one can predict it. But if you can do both, if you can do good damage and good supporting, that's the best case scenario for a unit to age well.
Yeah,
I think
that's also what I'm thinking.
something that has been very like confusing to me is that I've noticed that I'm going to mention the trigger warning, the Honkai Star Rail game, the other game. They've also like okay, this came into my mind when I was watching like the another Sajef Escoffier related video or like Skirk related video or something. Doing research for my video. Okay, I didn't watch it on my
It's
own
okay.
time.
It's
um,
okay.
and basically he said that one of Skirk's early constellations might be team-wide defense ignore or something, or like defense shred, like a team-wide buff. And then I realized, do we really only have one carry that like, and that carry being C2 Raiden, who buffs the team? Like who has some kind of team-wide buff? Or like without, I guess there are still some small things like Kinnick C2 or Lenny C4, something like some kind of res shred that the entire team can make advantage of, can take advantage of. But
C2.
most carries just only care about their own damage. And if we look at Honkai Star Rail, the 3.0 character, she literally gives like crit damage to all erudition characters. Like she's specifically meant to be played with other sub-DPS, and I don't know why they haven't done that yet. Like make a character that specifically wants to be like that does their own high damage, and I feel like the perfect character to do that would honestly be Skirk, but since they are boring, they are just going to give Skirk the most basic standard carry kit that just forces her into Escoffier, and that's it. But I think honestly she should have some kind of team-wide utility, like some kind of team-wide buff, because there's so much, like Furina and Escoffier are still going to be a decent portion of the team's damage. Okay, that was enough, yeah.
Either they make her base kit just a carry, and as constellations goes by, or even signature, she gets to support the team in a way. I don't know if they will go either in a quick playstyle, or you can kind of ditch Shenhe or Yelan or your fourth slot for another carry to like do quick damage. It's gonna depend. Either she does quick damage in like 7 seconds and you swap out, or she's just a hyper carry and you gotta deal with it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
We don't know.
I don't necessarily mean like a swap out carry, but just a carry like Raiden that's on field, but also like has supportive utility for the team.
I just
Yeah.
I just want to say this.
Go
I
ahead.
just want to say this. You and Mia, you and Mia gives 20 attack to the team with their first.
Hey
I
man,
don't
if we're
mean
gonna
some.
mention that, we have to mention E2C4,
I
which gives the
don't.
team attack after he's done bursting.
I don't mean
What a
like
Oh my
some
Chad.
lord.
hope buffs. I mean like
Okay,
actually
I just
make the
want to
kit
say
with
about
foils
Raiden
around it.
C2.
Like
I just had to mention it.
Ganyu
About
also has
Raiden C2, they could pick something like that and make it, instead of defense ignore, just shred.
Yeah.
yeah,
Just shred, bro.
yeah. I mean
Yeah.
Imagine
Ayato.
if Raiden C2
The
was shred.
the one issue I see with that idea, by the way, Saga, is that if they decide to do that in Genshin, like Kinkle mentioned at the very start of the episode, some sub DPSs can be up to like 50% of the team's damage.
That
So
too.
they'd have to make it
Okay.
very, very restrictive. And even
Yeah.
if they do make it restrictive, let's like say, for example, for the case of Scoffier, you said that Furina and Scoffier are already doing very good amounts of damage by themselves. So adding on top of it a buff that makes them do even more damage, you'd then have to punish the character itself for doing as much buffing. Otherwise, things go high wire. So my issue with it is like I feel like in Genshin the sub DPSs already do too much damage, arguably, and not all of them obviously, but like think of the ones that can snapshot, right? Right, like the older units. So you'd have to be very careful or very restrictive with these buffs.
I don't know. I feel like for
Mm.
Skirk, if they only like they are probably not going to. I mean, they could do it so that it's too broken, but even then, like C2 Mavrika, C2 Chaska, they've already been like so high on the ceiling. They might as well give her defense shred like 30% or
Yeah.
something.
Like I wouldn't mind it, for example, like in the case of Ayaka, right? It's on her C4, I believe, the defense shred,
Yeah.
right? But like something as early as C2 could be very, very broken for
Yeah.
a unit that is supposed to be like a hyper carry. Like if we again, I don't know what Skirk is. She could be, as far as I'm concerned, a healer, right? If we're assumed that Skirk is supposed to be dedicated on-field hyper carry, then giving her a defense shred as early as C1 or C2 would be definitely a choice of all times.
I
Like they would have to be
disagree.
very careful with it.
I disagree because like if you actually just give her like constellations that strictly focus on her damage, those are not going to increase the team's damage by that much. You already see it with like other characters like Kinnick constellations. They are like extremely good, but they are still diminished by having Emilie in the team, and like the team would technically gain more if Emilie wasn't in the team and doing her sub DPS and there was another support. But like it would technically just be optimal for Skirk teams to have some kind of team-wide increase instead of just strictly giving Skirk personal damage increases. Like they could end up underwhelming even though it's like Natlan cons. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, no. So the thing, what I meant there, I meant specifically the defense shred, because it's such a rare stat. We don't have that many sources of it. That if you're willing to give her buffs that for other like that buffs other units, I don't think it would be nearly as problematic, let's say, or like hard to balance as defense shred specifically. Because think of a unit, for example, that has defense shred on C2, Klee. There's a lot of showcases going around, if you guys seen them, right, in speedrunning and stuff, where Klee is put into the team just for the defense shred.
Yeah.
Not because
Yeah.
she makes sense, not because she can carry a supportive set, not because she can hold TDS. It's purely to access the defense shred because it's such a rare stat in Genshin that
Yes, it's so unexplored, bro.
yeah,
Only Lisa has it as a baseline.
like you'd have to be very, very careful with it. And again, that's to say that I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it or you can't do it. I'm just saying that you'd have to be very careful with it because it would influence a lot of units in the game, and it might result into her taking a big hit into her own personal damage to balance the fact that she has access to defense shred that early on in terms of cons. But if they move it, let's say, for example, as an alternative at C4, like Ayaka, for example, I wouldn't mind it as much, right? Like you got 5 copies of a unit in order to have defense shred, and the unit already does good damage. Like sure, it's 5 copies of a limited unit, so it wouldn't be as problematic to me at least.
That's true. I just wish there were more defense shredders, even if it's not much. Just there are ways to do it.
Yeah.
In different situations, you get this. In another situation, you get death shred. In another, resistance shred. In another, I don't know, attack buffs. Some shit like
Imagine
that. In fact, imagine the Electro part of Shilonen was defense shred. Actually
Holy.
useful.
imagine okay, but like
You'd invalidate C2 right then and there.
Instead,
Mm,
actually no, defense ignore because it has to be a buff. It can't be defense shred. It has to be defense ignore. But it goes like the same way for hyper carries.
Yeah,
But
right.
it would be fun.
imagine
Be
Pella.
funny.
Imagine Pella was in Genshin and she like applied cryo. She would cook Sidlali. That would be so funny.
Yeah, instead of 20 shred, you will get, I don't know. But let's make it a balanced number. 25-30% defense shred.
It would still be better than Sidlali, to be honest. Like all of the buffs that Sidlali gives are still buffs that you already have. So
Yeah.
it would
Just make Pella an Atlan unit.
True, give us scroll as well. Okay, now I really want Pella. Give us the Pella. And Silverwolf. Why aren't
I
they
will
doing
see.
why aren't they like doing more like Conquest already got 2 like crossover characters? Can they do more crossover characters that aren't Alloy, please?
You know, before we get all hyped up about crossover characters, let's not forget what happened last time they attempted one.
Oh no, no. Shut
Yeah,
up.
I just meant
All right, let's not
literally-
pretend they haven't attempted that before.
I literally just said just no one like Alloy. Like that was in my sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Honestly, a
and
collab
also
between like I was gonna say collabing like Star Rail in some sense with Genshin would be. I'm surprised this hasn't happened yet. Like I really am surprised they haven't tried that.
Yeah,
It's their own IP. They would easily be able to do it.
I mean, even Sparkle did like is now in Honkai Impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
also
next
what was the
crossover
game
unit.
called? BGR did a collab with like Devil May Cry. That's also been
Yep.
something that's like trending lately, and
Yeah.
the people seemed very pleased with it. So yeah, we could definitely get a collab, but I think we'll get a collab right after they actually show us an episode of the anime they promised us a few years ago. Don't you worry, guys. It's
I
gonna
don't think
happen
they're
one
ever
day.
doing that.
Okay,
That's
Just collaborate. Just
nuclear
do the
grade
full
copium
one.
right there.
Yeah,
just
right.
do the
That's why I
full
don't
one.
expect anything from Genshin devs. Like, I'm sorry, all right, but the artifact preset is still driving me crazy. It's been 5
Oh.
years. Please, Hoyo,
one day.
give us an artifact
Someone-
preset. Stop jumping around it.
Someone in the chat said something interesting. Tsaritsa Death Shred, and I think that could be the case. But
Mm.
currently, I'm
They could-
scared for the Tsaritsa to just be better than Sidlali as a Mavrika support, because obviously Tsaritsa is going to be like some kind of off-field cryo
Verdad.
support.
Tá bom.
Well, the thing
Um,
about off-fielders, right? If you look at Mavuika, sure, she can off-field, but like 90% of people are not off-fielding her because she's so much like stronger than most carries that you'd rather just have the team be revolved around her rather than the other way around. So it could end
yeah.
up being the same concept,
I don't
right, with
think
the Teresa?
I don't think
Which-
Tsaritsa is going to be a carry. Mavrika makes sense because she's pyro, she has access to the amplifying reaction. Why not? But Tsaritsa, I don't know.
But doesn't the
I
Teresa
kinda
also
wanna
have
see-
access to amplifying reactions?
Okay,
Yeah, and-
yeah.
And I feel like it hinders on their personality as an Archon as well, with the way the Sutra is. I wouldn't imagine. I would imagine she could be a DPS. It would kind of make sense.
I kind of want to see the Note Cry, which is the future expansion.
Yeah.
If they're gonna do the same way Natlan did with like one artifact set for DPS, one for support, please make the support set either defense shred or some other stat that's not explored right now.
Yeah, I'm tired of percent, like damage percent and resistance shred.
Yeah, that's one thing that
Actually,
I've talked to people before. That like a lot of people were hoping that Furina would get pushed out of the meta once we go into Natlan, and I feel like that's literally why they're throwing at us defense percent, or I mean damage percent as much. That they're trying to push Furina out of the equation, and I honestly don't know if they did a good job or it or a bad job. Because
Actually, idea. The defense shred set be like the quantum set. 10 baseline, extra 10 if you're from that region. Or some shit.
It would still be
God.
better than Natlan said, because Natlan said is like straight up 12% or not, and then 38%. Oh,
Yeah,
28%.
make it similar to Deepwood. Just do skill or burst damage, and the uptime make it either low, so the supports need to take a lot, or long and they tick very slow, or you
I
have to like deal with the uptime.
I feel like Deepwood should be buffed. Maybe 45% resistant instead of
I
30%.
cannot aim that enough. Please give us any form of Dendro resistance shred that isn't constellations. That would be so appreciated.
Oh, I don't think it's gonna happen, but it could,
Oh, speaking
because
of
like
Dendro,
if Yelan happened, Chevruz happened. They could just make a unit similar to Chev for Quicken,
yeah,
because I think the Quicken needs it.
we talked
It's
about
the
this.
most abandoned archetypes.
Talked about this before, but yeah, Electro Dendro would be a pretty like it's going to happen probably, like a Chevrus or a Scoffia for Dendro and Electro.
Yeah.
Either make
I
it
don't
like
know if they can make an Escoff here, because that's technically Nahida's role in that team, to just do a decent amount of off-field damage. But a Chevy
Mhm.
definitely could be a thing, right? Like a unit that instead of attack buff, it does an EM buff, and gives damage percent, for example, because there isn't that many sources for damage percent for Dendro. Would go a very long way.
I'm pretty sure like they should be a damage dealer. Like that's also something Sejef. I'm a Sejef hate watcher, but these are some takes that I agree with. Okay, like he did say that like a character that would only like that would make Dendro and Electro like make it its own archetype should also automatically be a damage dealer.
Yeah, I'm back.
Oh, welcome back.
Yeah.
Should also be a damage dealer because the main pro of quicken compared to amplifying reactions like cryo and like melt and vape are like that you can maintain the quicken aura and let both basically let every single unit in the team do damage. Like that's the main pro. Like in melt teams, you can't make Slali melt. You can only make Mavrika melt. But technically, in Dendro and Electro teams, like every single one of the characters profits from the Dendro, from the Quicken Aura. So why not just make everyone the damage dealer and have shared distribution and have like a very fun kind of team dynamic? I feel like that would be really cool. And
if they really wanna push it to the meta like top one, they will do the following. They will change the way Quicken works, and instead of only amplifying the hits that reacts, amplifies every hit.
I mean, they wouldn't even like that's a cool idea, but they wouldn't even have to go that far. Since we
think
made
it
fun
would
of
be
Baiju
so
earlier,
fun.
look at Baiju's buff, but actually make it worth it by today's standards, right? Like imagine a unit that just says whatever is the additive formula for the additive damage formula for quicken and spread. He just adds another additive value on top of it, kind of like Shunha. But it's more towards the formula rather towards just a flat attack buff. There you go. Now all of the sudden you have like a Chevrus for quicken aura.
yeah, but to be fair, then I would like rather that not be a unit but just straight up like buff the reaction because I feel like the teams like what teams would I guess quick bloom teams would also profit from that, but definitely not as much as like the pure quicken team. But it would be fine.
Yeah,
But
the
just
reason I want
straight
to
up
lock it
buff.
into a unit and not like the reaction itself is because you can lock the reaction while doing hyperbloom. So it would buff hyperbloom. And I'm not saying buffing
Oh, you
hyperbloom is a
mean
bad thing. I'm just saying like I'd rather, like if we're talking about quicken specifically, you can lock it to quicken specifically by having the unit have the usual things that these dedicated niche supports do, which is only have Electro and Dendro. If you don't have Electro and Dendro, you get punished somehow. Like you lose a buff or you get less of the buff that you were supposed to get.
you mean as in like it would like the reaction buff would also buff the hyper blooms and that's why you would not?
No, it wouldn't buff the hyper bloom, but rather it would buff the few times where you get quicken, right? Because you can
Yeah.
have some quicken uptime while still generating hyper bloom.
Yeah, but still, like, Alhaitham, who's mainly profiting from these, would not. Like, it would definitely not be the
It wouldn't
same
break the game in any way,
increase.
no, for sure, for sure.
No, it would
But
not
that's why I'm
be
saying
the.
I don't know if we want to have buff hyper bloom, because I'm not against it. But if the attempt here is, let's say, push quicken teams to be more competitive, with, like, let's say, I don't know, hyper bloom damage, then yeah. But if we're trying to push both of these archetypes, Dendro in general, right, like current standards, let's say 100k DPS for whatever reason, because that's what's been going around lately, then yeah, no, you wouldn't want to restrict it, right? You'd just buff both the archetypes for Dendro.
Yeah, but because, like, technically you would place, like, it's probably going to be an electro unit, and then, like, theoretically you would replace Cookie with that electro unit, and then you have a team where Cookie is not, like, the hyper bloom Cookie is not taking advantage out of it because it's not buffing her damage, but the other Cookie would be taking advantage out of it. The special Cookie that that actually does damage in Quicken. Actually,
Okay.
actually that would. Okay, never mind what I said, but yeah. Okay, we should just honestly. We talked about Quicken so much. We should talk about the Dendro Sub-dps, since we haven't talked about Emilie yet.
I was
Oh,
about to say,
yeah.
isn't that just Emilie?
I mean, there's the better one, which is Nahida, because Hyperloom's better than Burning, therefore Nahida is better than Emilie. That's their logic.
All right, I don't know.
Surely.
We're being sarcastic here, right? We're being sarcastic here.
Yeah, I'm too. Yes, it's very
Alright.
obvious. Like,
Okay,
Alright, just
so
make sure.
Emilie. What do we think
My
about
God.
Emilie just as a flex slot for any team that has Pyro in it?
I don't even play her as a sub DPS. I play her as a hyper carry on field. And she performs the way I expected. Good.
Also, you know how Saga, you said earlier that we should are we assuming Scoth here R1? I think the difference between Emilie without signature and with signature is like night and day. So if we're referring to her with signature, then yes, I agree. She's a really strong unit, and like a lot of people underrate her. But without signature,
I haven't
let's
even
say
made
without
the.
even the
I
event
haven't
button.
even made the take yet.
Yeah, but no, I'm just saying in general, right? Because we talked about Emilie before in multiple
Oh,
previous
okay.
episodes of the podcast. Like, I still think it's very important to mention to people who want to go for Emilie, please consider the signature weapon. It is definitely an investment worthwhile, and the unit does lose quite a bit without her signature.
I think the signature is only like extremely valuable in the way that you are describing it in single target. Or like in single target non-multi-wave, then it's very important to have it. But like if you can, like the main thing for me is the energy, definitely. But the energy isn't worth it when you are already getting your burst, which in the situations where the burst is really good in, which would be the AoE situations and multi-wave, there's a 50 cost burst, and those extra particles are just going to guarantee you her burst. I had like the multi-wave with the ruin guards, that one abyss I forgot, with like last chamber
Yeah, with like
was
5
with the
ruin
two
guards, like
guards,
major front to back.
yeah.
Oh,
And I
that
was
one? Oh,
getting
that one.
my Emilie burst consistently with no energy recharge and
Yeah, I
stuff
mean,
of
to be
armor.
fair though, like ruin guards and ruin graders give more energy, clear white energy, than I think any unit in the game, or I mean any enemy in the game.
Do they give more than Treasure Hoarder? Treasure Hoarder's gonna give a lot.
I don't know, right? Like I'm talking about elite enemies specifically. But I know
Well,
like they're
maybe Elite Enemy.
way higher side of like giving energy particles. I think
Yeah,
the only
they
one
do
that
give
kind of
quite a
beats
bit.
them for that is like Xingqiu. Like triple Xingqiu also give a lot of
Oh
energy.
yeah, true. Triple King, he does give a lot of energy.
So I think that kind of like is a favorable matchup to her. But yes, I agree with you if you can somehow get the energy requirements. I haven't actually looked too much into Kanich and how much Kanich helps her. I assume Kanich being an Atlan unit gives like 5 Dendro particles on the first cast of his E. Or does it give 3?
Oh, it's not. It's definitely not 3. It's 5.
Yeah, right. And with the assumption that he only does this once, it's still like very, very good for Emilie's energy requirements.
Yeah,
So my perception of Emilie was mainly like outside of Kenichi teams, because I did most of my calcs and looked at her before Kenichi came out. I haven't done as much when after Kenichi came out. So that could definitely close the gap between her signature and the second best options.
yeah. That's also another thing, like Kinnick versus like the other teams. But like I agree, to make her like viable in basically every situations on a lot of teams, her signature is really, really nice and valuable, and you should
Yeah,
probably go for it. And with that, she's a good option. She's not the
yeah,
best and strong option, but she's just like, she has her upsides,
Hmm?
as in her front load and her honestly pretty good way to deal with AoE content. I think she's one of the better sub DPSs regarding AoE. Her Ascension 1 is very important.
Yeah,
Whenever
it's pretty good AoE from what I've played.
yeah,
The
and
ult,
hmm?
the ult is just the best thing for her when it comes to AoE.
Yeah, the ult is
With good investment, you can wipe out waves.
yes.
Yeah.
I'm a strong defender of her ultimate. It's definitely very strong. But yeah, those in combination just make her a strong unit in AoE. And yeah, she also has the upside of burning. Like, usually burning teams had the issue of you not being able to play melee characters. But with Emilie, you can like get the burning resistance, and then you don't, like, you barely take burning damage. It's pretty funny. 85% burning pyro resistance. That's such a funny stat. Imagine what it was pyro resistant shred. She shredded pyro resistance by
That would be
80%.
insane if she did.
Yeah, that would be funny. And
I
then
think that would make her just shred Dendro if she had like a burning passive like Nilu. She will only shred Dendro. I don't think she'll shred Pyro much.
I feel like
She will mostly focus on Dendro.
in a
I
perfect world,
don't know. It could help Lini.
yeah, I feel like in a perfect world, she would also kind of provide some buffs to pyro characters, because
I wouldn't have.
This is basically agreeing with everything that Zajev, Justern, and Jamie said. What
No,
if Emilie had Shred?
okay, that's not what I'm like. I'm not saying that she should, like, TGS was saying that she needs a rework. I'm not saying that. I would just say that it was nice to like open more options in the future if we ever get a pyro carry that specifically relies on burning reaction. Just because of that.
The
I mean,
only
I would.
rework.
isn't
I would.
technically Lenny that?
No.
No. What?
Like, he
Lini
wants a
was the
viral aura.
closest.
Yeah, but not a
He
burning
wants
aura.
Aurora, but the passive is damage percent. If they wanted it to make it good, they would make it a multiplicative. So it's like you're playing Vape and Melt, but without that. You're just playing Monopyro.
Actually, speaking of Linny, I was about to show this. Emilie does another funny thing, which arguably, okay, there's in my circles, Maréchaussée is called a fraud set because it takes a bit to stack, even with Furina in the team. And for characters with front load, it's a bit annoying. But there's a
Yeah.
set that doesn't have that issue, which Emilie technically, when she's in the team and there's some burning reactions, that enables the set Reverie. And Linny and Klee both don't have great sets outside of like two piece, but like that's not great. Linny on Maréchaussée can be very fraud because you can miss your initial burst hit. Like the crit, it's very important, so it doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
But if you play Emilie Linny or Emilie Klee, then switching Linny to a well-invested Reverie set could be a good option. But the problem is just that you would need two sets of that. Like, you would need two Reverie sets, because what are you playing on your Emilie in that team? You would need to farm a lot of sets, but it's technically a big upside.
I mean, couldn't you just run Deepwood on her? I know that would murder her, like...
And that's true, yeah. Deepwood isn't is not that
Oh.
far off when she's
Yeah.
the only Dendro
So
character.
you can just like
In
take her set
teams,
technically from her.
in Kinich teams, if you can, like, you should. You should. If you play Kinich, you should. If you can
Yeah,
get, like,
someone
the
has to hold the put for sure.
Cinder City on Mavuika and trigger it, in which it's very easy. Like, it's Emilie E, Mavuika E, you have Cinder. And you
Okay.
put
Yeah.
the put on Emilie, the only thing she really loses overall is like the attack percent and 10 damage percent in total.
But to be fair, the best variation has Emilie still on Reverie. It's Yan-san on Scroll and Mavrika on Deepwood.
Yeah, you have that. She technically doesn't lose much using Deepwood. But if you cannot use it, it's optimal. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Deepwood Mavuika is something else.
Who do Mavrika's like goated? I use her on an HP Sans. Because I don't have an attack sense. But her damage is so minimal in
God.
that team that I don't care about it. Even though I have R5 Serpent Spine. Yes. Okay, then let's go. I guess, I mean, there's not much more to say about Emilie, right? She's
Yeah,
Yeah, I
Emilie,
think we
in-
talked
Emilie,
enough
good
about
unit.
Emilie.
Emilie, good unit, needs more carries that uses her.
I'm pretty sure there's going to be, like, definitely some kind of 4-star also. I'm expecting a 4-star Harry or, like, character that wants burning in the future.
It could be another off-fielder or a character that's mixed. They could make a burning set.
Also, speaking of that, I also expect some kind of geo construct team, a construct team in the future for Chiori. Since right now
Don't
she's
give me hope.
not the best in
Please.
slot. She's not the best in slot option in any of the teams. They are still good teams, but I'm pretty sure that something's cooking for Chiori, and that we
They
need
could
to.
make a character that has
I-
Zhongli's pillar in their kit, but make it do damage and make him be able to like spam constructs all the way, and you'd be able to like trap enemies and just microwave them.
Not the
If you could do
microwave.
that, it
The-
would be funny.
The one issue with a construct character that would help Shiori is not that it can't happen, is that it technically already did. It's not the best unit in the world, but technically Kachina exists. And
Yeah,
she does
but-
give 40% damage.
Yeah, we need something bigger than Kachina, like a.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure, for
that-
sure. It's just like I really wanted Geo in any way, shape, or form, right? Like it's my favorite element, I think, in the whole game. I really wanted it to be, buffed in any way, shape, or form, and I feel like the fact that Kachina exists already makes it so it's not their top priority to introduce yet another construct character to help Shiori out. But I hope I'm
Honestly,
wrong. I hope that's not the case.
I feel like they're gonna continue to neglect Geo. I feel. I just can't really see them focusing on Geo too much in the future. I really don't.
I kind of
At the very least, I
disagree.
don't know. I feel like they've kind of. I don't know. They just don't release many construct characters at all. So I feel like
any.
they kind of thrown that idea by the wayside.
Like,
Maybe they
what was
changed up an
the-
Arkurai, who knows? But I don't know, man.
How long was it before Shiori came out that we got a Geo character? Wasn't it like 2 years?
I think so, yeah. Well,
Right.
Navia was
So
before
like
she
they don't
but-
even bother releasing Geo characters to begin with. So the issue isn't just the Geo characters, it would have to also be a Geo character with a construct that ends up wanting to work with Shiori.
I feel like that's a bit too doom and gloom, like regarding Geo. Xiangling to me was like their apology to people who were shitting on Geo. But like technically Xiangling is a buffer. She's not really a Geo character.
Yeah.
Doesn't have the Geo
That's
identity.
that's always the actual sad and gloom things about Geo characters, that most of the quote unquote better or good Geo characters end up being good despite of Geo, not because of Geo.
Yeah, but I mean, Kachina is only so strong in my opinion. Okay, not so strong. Uh, but Kachina is okay. Okay, Kachina and Gilonen. I should rephrase. Kachina and Gilonen are only so strong. So Kachina is okay. Gilonen is so strong because you can react with all elements. If that wasn't the case, if it was a Dendro situation or something, if they were Dendro supports, they would look a lot more like awkward. And I feel like that's, even though it's kind of sad, but like that's the main strength of the reaction, that it can react with the patch elements. And that's how I see it. And that they are so easy to make work. Like some reactions require so much. Like try to get electrocharge ownership. Awkward in taser teams.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't want to silence you. But...
Did we talk about Yae?
Oh, we didn't talk about Miko.
I think we did talk actually about Yae Miko, because
Did we?
we ended up like segueing it into Ayato. And like,
I don't think
because I remember us talking about like Fischl at some point. And if we talked about Fischl, then we talked about Electro off-fielders. But we can talk about it if you guys have things to say.
Miko is honestly, she kind of has the Electro syndrome, where they are like supposed to be played in aggravate, but Overload is kind of just a better archetype. I think Overload, Yae Miko fits her better than the aggravate teams. Am I being honest?
Unfortunately, that is the case.
Also, I feel like an aggravate, she's just better being used on field, which makes her not a sub-DPS. So
yeah, true.
And a lot of people like to talk about Tenori, and maybe I'm a Tenori hater or something, but like, just because she has synergy with Tenori doesn't all of a sudden magically make it so the Tenori team is actually a good competitive team. Like, I'm sorry, I don't want to be that guy.
Okay,
I don't want to be that guy.
Coming
but, like,
from
better
you.
with
the
I feel like
let's calm down,
Furina,
I've seen a lot of people recommend like Yae Miko because like, oh, you can run her in Tenori teams. Okay, but like it's still a Tenori team at the end of the day. And like, do we know for a fact that that's better, like you said, Saga, for example, than running her in a Chevrolet's team? Like, which one calcs better?
Well,
see, like, I don't know, right? I'm just. I heard some people say that, and I was just thinking to myself, like, you're saying that you should bull her for Tenari, but like,
oh yeah, I wouldn't.
Outside of the synergy, is it actually a good team? Like, is that actually is a team that would help you clear?
Okay, to clarify, the Tighnari Yae Miko team was the highest cheating team in 3.0.
That was a while back.
That's why people hyped it up.
The back in my days team.
But still, okay. Alhaitham, I don't think it's worse than Alhaitham, Nahida, Fischl, Zhongli. Just saying.
Yeah, probably not. Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not. But again, like now we're entering territories of like, let's run suboptimal teams, right? And see which one struggles more to clear.
Yae Miko Tighnari is definitely not. It's a team of all time. It's not great.
Yeah. Which is why, like, okay, this is gonna sound a bit wild, but hear me out, because I'm getting a bit spicy right now. The people who are recommending Yae Miko over Ayato is getting access to Scoffier. I don't think Yae Miko is getting access to Scoffier. So shouldn't that automatically put him at a better, like, bull value than Yae Miko?
The people actually recommend? I mean, okay, here's the thing though. Like, is this if you, let's say you want to get Ayato and you want to use Ayato, that's 2 5-stars you have to get in a single patch, right?
Yeah.
Which for most people isn't doable, unless they saved. So like, it's a big asterisk to say Yae Miko over or to Ayato over Yae Miko, because like if you're not using Scoffier, Ayato's value is not nearly as high, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. But like, you could say the same thing about Yae Miko, right? Where it's like, okay, you're bullying her for Tenari, which is like, You
For
either
her, for
have him
her.
or you pray to the RNG gods that you'll roll the 1 out of 8 when you lose the 50-50. If
I mean,
assuming
but
you even want to lose the 50-50.
Yeah, but I mean the
you
sentiment.
could pull Yae Miko for Yae Miko. You don't have to pull it for
Yeah,
Tenari.
that's another reason, right? For sure. But that's why I'm saying, like, I haven't considered it from that angle, and that is definitely an angle to consider that I haven't considered before. But I'm going off the assumption that you already have Ayato, right? Rather than you're bullying him and you're bullying Escoffier at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you have to
What-
build for
yeah.
both, that might be a bit sus. The thing is, you could argue that there's a lot of people who are already in a situation like that because there's a lot of people who are saving for Skirk,
Yeah.
which should
But-
be like, again, I don't have any information, but it wouldn't surprise me if she comes right after Scoffier in terms of batches.
I mean, like, Skirk is a patch away, which gives a bit time. Although I will say, from what I've heard, this patch doesn't give out a whole lot of primo gems, so it's probably a similar situation. But
Yeah.
yeah.
But that's why I'm saying, like, kind of estimating what people can and can't pull is a bit more tricky and difficult. So that's why I'm going with the assumption that you have the unit, right? The unit already exists. And I think it's relevant because a lot of people are talking about, like, Scoffier with cryo units, and they have every right to do so. It's just there are also Hydro units that can benefit from it. And Ayato happens to be, unfortunately, one of them that would really, really appreciate Scoffier. And I don't think any team comes close to him from what I've seen.
Who?
I don't think any like teammate for Ayato or any team, generally speaking, for Ayato ends up coming close in terms of DPS to the Escoffier Ayato team. Like, it just ends up being his best in slot by far.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah. What about on a completely different note, right? We talked about like most of the units or most of the elements for sub DPS. What about the animal sub DPS? And here's what I'm thinking, right?
Do we have one of those? Farza, I guess.
But what I'm thinking is, like, capitalizing on Kazuha's, like, burst and making it more of a unit that absorbs an element, and now you're guaranteed to get a decent amount of application. Nothing insane, but nothing, sorry to say, as low as Lynette, right? Like, somewhere in between, where you put this animal unit in your team and they become a sub DPS of that said element. So they can help you both in application and they can help you in doing a bit of damage.
What is
right?
this Lunette's Len? Lunette's application is fine. You just need the C1 or C2? C2.
How many uses it per per rotation, or like what's the intervals of application?
I forgot what the intervals are, but if you get 2, it should be like every 2 seconds-ish. Wait, I need to check what's the interval for
Yeah,
minutes.
feel free to check it and let me know. But that's why I'm saying, like, maybe a little bit better, because I'm assuming this unit is like a 5-star. And obviously they do like a respectable amount of damage. The only issue I have with a unit like that is it would kind of invalidate other sub DPS units, because the flexibility of them, just at any point they can become a budget official, or they can become a budget I don't know, Xiangling, or a budget let's say Xingqiu, right? Just being able to switch elements might be too good to be true. So how would you guys go about it?
There could be ways
as an idea.
There could be ways to balance it, I think.
Wait, I think I'm misunderstanding. The way when you first talked about it, I had to picture that like how Kazo works, where you just infuse an element with a burst, and then you have application and potential damage from reactions. But maybe I'm misunderstanding.
Yeah, I was thinking it's more of like a combination of Lynette and Kazuha, right? Where like you absorb an element and you summon a construct, let's say, or you summon
I see now. Yeah.
Like something that does application for you, and that application depends on whatever element you absorbed.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like literally Lynette's kit, but like I was telling Saga, a bit better application and like a bit more damage.
I actually don't think that would be too crazy. And that's because as we can see with Chaska and kind of Emilie and some other characters, it's kind of bad when the damage that's like coming from you is not like your actual damage. Like Chaska not being a pyro unit hurts her a lot. Or like a potential character that can't work in Chevrolet that would do electro damage, that would suck. Or like a character that, like an Anemo character that absorbs cryo, like you can't play them in Escoffier. So that would balance them. They would balance their flexibility. So I don't think it would be too crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not in terms of power, by the way. Like, I'm not more concerned with the character being a DPS ceiling for any team. I'm more concerned with the fact that you can get one 5-star unit that ends up being a sub DPS for any element that you want. So at any point you want a sub DPS of an element, that unit would just be there, ready to become that element for you.
Yeah,
That could invalidate like other sub DPSs, even if they do more damage than them, because they are not only offering their damage, they're also offering reaction enabling, right? Like,
yeah, but
if we were to, for example, make them a 4-star, right? All of a sudden, we finally have another 4-star that isn't Xingqiu that actually applies off-field hydro, and like assuming they give them good ICD, that would be kind of massive, right?
yeah, but again, like if you're focusing on the like off-field damage aspect, then even like let's say in Alekino, you want to replace Fischl with her, since she's like she can replace Fischl, even though
Yeah.
she's a Nemo character, you still can't do it because it would not work with Chevrolet. Like that's how I see it.
Oh yeah. I see
Yeah.
what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
That could definitely hurt them. And then you can argue for electro carries. Fischl A4 automatically makes her significantly better.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
You're right. So maybe a unit like that would be nice, right? To have an Anemo character that actually does the thing that everyone wanted Chaska to be, which is actually absorb elements. Because a
true,
lot
I
of
wanted
units I
that.
feel like get pushed out of certain team comps because they just don't have the application. Like, for example, like Candice has been in a better situation lately due to some like fortunate or unfortunate circumstances for her, but like back in the day the reason you didn't use Candice was because just her application wasn't enough, it wasn't good enough. So
Yeah.
a unit like that could just take the absorption from Candice and automatically enable you to do these things. Or a unit like Bennett, right? All of a sudden you don't have to worry about Xiangling or Mavwika, right? You can run Mavwika as a DPS, and the second team, if you still hate Xiangling ER requirements, you can just take the absorption from Bennett and enable her to do off-field Pyro application for your cryo characters or your hydro characters. So like you said, it might be a redundant character, quote unquote, but I feel like the flexibility alone would make it a desirable character.
Yeah, it sounds interesting, definitely. Thing is, they are like very uncreative, so I don't think a hit as creative as that would come across their mind.
Let's have some hope, right? No doom and gloom, like you said. No doom and gloom.
I think
Okay.
we've
They
had
can think of something
enough
like that.
opium as we
Yeah.
played this fucking game. Oh, dude.
Okay, well then I don't think there's any more sub DPSs we can gap about. And we already talked about the future of sub DPS, so maybe we could get the episodes to the end, unless anyone has like one more thing they want to talk about regarding sub DPS. We didn't really talk about a lot of 4-star sub DPSs, but I don't think 4-star sub DPSs are meant to deal damage. It's mostly about their application.
You know, I wasn't gonna mention anything, but technically you saying that kind of triggered the team in my head, which is as cool as hybrid carries are, throwing a bunch of sub DPSs into a team is actually not as bad of an idea as people think it is. Like, you make a team out of Fischl, Xiangling, and like, I don't know, let's say a Farazon or Lanyan, right? And you buff them with a Furina or Bennett. It's actually going to do a decent amount of damage, more than you'd expected the team to do, because there are multiple characters there that can snapshot Bennett's buff, which allows the third character to just go on field and do their thing. And it's not insane or anything by any standard, but it can clear still,
I've actually
right?
done that before. Just buffed sub
Yeah.
DPSs like that. Right, it does work.
Yeah. Right? And it's
That was
interesting because a lot of people hate snapshotting, but I personally like really love snapshotting. I obviously understand that it's not the best thing you can do from a game design perspective and game design space, let's say. But generally speaking, understanding snapshotting and actually taking advantage of it can be actually really fun and can enable certain things as much as it takes away from design space. It can also enable you to on-field certain characters or to capitalize on like single buffs. Because you mentioned earlier, right, that we only have on-fielder massive attack buffs. Snapshotting kind of bypasses that and allows you to kind of have a team-wide Bennett buff. So yeah, what I'm saying basically is, since this is an episode about sub DPSs, I recommend for people, even just for fun, right, to throw a bunch of sub DPSs that are really strong into a team, preferably if they can snapshot in some way, shape, or form, and see how it performs. Right, you can kind of mix and match and be creative with it.
It's definitely a playstyle that people can try out. I mean, we've made probably one of the most popular versions of that team.
Yeah.
Very quick
Yeah.
swappy, very fast gameplay. I wanted to talk about one more 4-star that I think we need to talk about her. Like, I think people have different opinions on this character, what their strength is right now and what their problems are. I've heard different takes made, so I want to talk about Beidou.
Okay.
One of the oldest 4-stars. Beidou theoretically still has, and I found, like, I made a calculation recently. I didn't do a damage calc, but theoretically she has the highest motion values in 2 targets, like in single target, like 2 targets, but then all the damage she dishes out against like these targets divided by 2. Which basically means that her damage is still like extremely high and competitive in 2 targets, but she has so many issues that she like literally isn't talked about. And I want to, like, what do you think is her biggest issue?
Energy, I would say.
Believe
then-
it or not,
well-
I think it's her berry mechanic. If
Parry.
Beidou got the maximum amount of energy,
That, yeah.
regardless of the
yeah.
berry landed or not, she would instantly be a much more appealing
Yeah.
and significant unit in the meta.
Yeah, and that goes into energy, yeah.
I don't think it's parry, to be honest. I think it's more.
I don't have an issue with the berry itself, right? To be frank, I'm just telling you that like them balancing her energy requirement depending on you wanting to berry is an issue, not because of the berry within itself, is because you don't get as many berries in a lot of teams because you don't have the team flexibility for it, or the rotation flexibility, more like.
Okay, maybe then I kind of agree, but there's also definitely just content issues. Just
Yeah, that too.
as soon as, like, the concept of a character that only excels in one situation, like immediately, like it's basically like a Chaska situation where if you need something to compensate that. Like if Chaska, there's a chamber where there's a lot of AoE suddenly, or like even 3 targets or something, you are not going to have a good time.
No, you really won't.
And same with Beidou. If the team is specifically built around Beidou's damage, then you're going to have a bad time, like when you're facing against only one boss or something. And I feel like that's the main thing that hindered Beidou. She still has defensive utility, which I don't want people to forget. Both interruption resistance and damage reduction. She's basically the sister of Xingqiu in a way, like regarding her defensive utility. That's
Yeah.
why Taser feels so That's why you survive in Taser, even though Sucrose has one of the worst defensive stats in the game. Actually,
Yeah.
700 defense is not the lowest, but 9k HP
In
is
tandem,
definitely
also
very
that you
low.
break people's voice with the the electrocharge procs. It also helps like to some extent to CC the enemies on top of her own like
Oh yeah,
CC.
that's
Yeah.
well, I guess there's not much more to say. I have seen a very impressive Beidou speedrun with Arlecchino. I'm going to mention that every time. Beidou Arlecchino with C1 Arlecchino, I think, and Beidou was hitting for 35k per burst proc, and I want you all to realize how much damage that is. If it's like, usually if you get 10 hits, then it's 50 procs, which would be 50 times 35, and that's like mathematical 1,750,000 damage spread across
But-
2 targets.
For reference, isn't that around like Emilie when she's being probably buffed?
Yeah, there would be an entire Emilie's worth, like Emilie's damage
Yeah,
worth
right.
rotation thing. Yeah.
I think like that's the closest character I can think of that does about like 35 per tick as well, is probably like Emilie. So you can basically
Oh, per
turn
tick, it's
Beidou into
wouldn't
Emilie.
I wouldn't compare them like that, but like the impact would be similar that
Yeah,
Beidou
yeah.
would
I'm
have in
talking
that
only
scenario.
purely through impact, true.
But yeah, but other than that, Beidou doesn't see much play. I feel like Yansan could have, like Beidou Yansan could have been fun, but Beidou just doesn't move. So like I guess you
Yeah.
I
can
also
still
want to
snapshot.
mention.
So yeah.
I also want to mention that a big part of it you could blame it on Auroran. That Auroran kind of stole some of Beidou's market value,
That's true.
especially that also he
That
was
is actually
given
really
for
true,
free,
yeah.
so you could argue
Yeah,
that
Auroran
most people have access to him.
has the discussion that we kind of started in the beginning with the supports versus damage dealer, because like he's more of a support than an actual damage dealer. So he's going to kind of age better than Beidou, because the
Yeah.
buff he provides is just more significant than the sub-DPS Beidou is dealing.
I've seen
Yeah.
a lot of calculations actually comparing a Yonsan and C6, specifically Auroran, and he can actually get very close in some teams. I'm not saying he's a direct replacement in every team, but in some certain teams, Auroran, for example, like Chaska, he can actually be a very competitive option instead of a Yonsan, due to, like you discussed already, her damage falling off when you're not facing a single target. So the 30% attack buff from C6 can go a long way on top of him actually doing damage, unlike Yansan, which doesn't really do that much damage. So a lot of the times you can use him just for the support, like you said. And that's why I asked the question I asked in the middle of the episode, right? Like, would you rather be a sub-DPS with support constellations, or would you rather be a sub-DPS with the Bower Spike constellations?
Yeah, it's definitely it's an interesting. I don't think there's like a correct answer to it though.
Yeah, it obviously depends on a lot of things, but generally speaking, most people seem to agree that you'd rather be supportive, because there's more applications where you could be used in. So yeah,
That's true.
he's a pretty good unit.
Unless your supportive constellation is Rosaria C6, and then it's 20%
okay,
physical
okay.
resistance,
Listen,
right?
we are gonna see the resurrect of the captain and physical in Nordcry, confirmed. Uncle Martin.
Surely.
Surely. No, we do need another physical DPS. Yours kind of dog.
Oh, cat is just my cat's just ran something over. I need to check on that. Anyway, usual cat things. Okay, well then I think we are at the end of the episode then. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next episode. Also, thanks to the guests for coming here. Oh, if you want to join the Sucrose Stans podcast, feel free to DM me on Discord. My bio is linked in the description. And yeah, thank you. See you in the next one. Bye bye.
See